the strangest and most absurd taxes in history. Today's topic is about the strangest taxes in history. When we think of taxes, income tax usually comes to mind, as it's the one we pay directly and feel most acutely. Some may also think of excise taxes, like those on tobacco. In any case, the taxes we pay today usually have some reasonable explanation behind them, though not everyone would agree. However, in the past, there were some taxes so bizarre that even after paying them, you might still be left scratching your head. From taxes for not having children to taxes for covering your chest, here are some of the most peculiar taxes in history. Let's begin the countdown. 7th place, the hat tax. The hat tax was levied in Britain from 1784 to 1811, specifically targeting men's hats. In other words, if you wore a hat, you had to pay a tax. Introduced by Prime Minister William Pitt, the tax was based on the notion that hats reflected social class. During the 18th century in Britain, hats were symbols of wealth. Pitt, who became Prime Minister at the young age of 24, used this as an opportunity to impose a tax to fill the country's coffers during a period of upheaval in Europe, including the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon. People, of course, found ways around the tax, such as wearing other head coverings instead. In 1804, the tax was expanded to include all headwear. Thus, the 18th century hat tax in Europe claimed 7th place. 6th place, the whiskey tax. This tax was imposed in the early days of the United States, not as a sales tax on whiskey but rather a production tax. It was introduced by Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton, who imposed a hefty 25% tax on whiskey production. The tax mainly affected poor Western farmers who often supplemented their income by producing whiskey. Meanwhile, wealthier Southern farmers growing cotton or tobacco were not taxed in the same way, leading to significant unrest. Although it resurfaced during the Civil War for revenue purposes, it never managed to gain popular acceptance. The tax imposed on poor whiskey producers earns it the 6th spot on this list. 5th place, the childlessness tax. During World War II, the Soviet Union introduced a tax on childlessness in 1941. Men aged 25 to 50 and women aged 20 to 45 who had no children were required to pay 6% of their income. While there were exemptions for those unable to have children, the policy aimed at encouraging childbirth in a time of declining birth rates due to the war. Surprisingly, the tax persisted until the Soviet Union's collapse in the late 20th century, making the childlessness tax one of history's most peculiar taxes. 4th place, the beard tax. The beard tax was introduced in Tsarist Russia by Emperor Peter the Great, who aimed to accelerate westernization. To encourage clean-shaven appearances, a tax was imposed on anyone who wanted to keep a beard. Those who refused to pay would be forcibly shaved by the police. The policy faced significant resistance, as beards were viewed as a divine gift by many Russians under the influence of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Despite initial tax success, the beard tax eventually saw fewer payers, as people began to shave. 3rd place, the urine tax. This tax existed in ancient Rome, where urine was collected for its ammonia, used in laundry, tanning, and even teeth whitening. Emperor Vespasian, who is known for constructing the first public latrines in Rome, imposed a tax on the collection of urine. It proved effective at curbing disputes over access to urine while raising significant revenue. There's a famous story involving Vespasian's son, who complained about the tax being filthy. The emperor reportedly had him sniff a coin, saying that money does not smell. This memorable quote, "Pecunia non olet," is now well known in Latin literature. 2nd place, the air tax. As the name suggests, this was a tax on air. Proposed by Louis XV of France in the 18th century, when the country was on the verge of collapse, the tax was never implemented. With France drowning in debt from previous wars, Louis XV's idea of taxing the air caused such an uproar that it had to be shelved immediately. Had it been enacted, it would surely be remembered as one of the most absurd policies of all time. First place, the Brest tax. The Brest tax was levied in the Kingdom of Travancore in India. In this kingdom, lower caste women were forbidden from covering their upper bodies unless they paid a tax based on the size of their breasts. The tax originated from upper caste anger at lower caste women attempting to dress modestly. One famous case involved a woman named Nanjali who refused to pay the tax, instead cutting off her breasts and presenting them to the tax collector. Her story spread rapidly, and the ensuing outrage led to the abolition of the Brest tax shortly after. There certainly have been some truly bizarre taxes throughout history. While the taxes from ancient or medieval times might be somewhat understandable given the context, the fact that the Brest tax persisted into more modern times is genuinely shocking. It just goes to show that the world is full of strange and unbelievable stories. This has been the top weirdest taxes in history. And I'll see you next time with more fascinating stories. Thank you for watching.